I guess I could start this story off with once upon a time, but this ain't one of those stories. But you're not really gonna believe it any more than you would one of those. Anyways, here we go. I was out hiking in Warwick State Forest. That's down there in Massachusetts, by the way. And yes, there's more to Massachusetts than just Beantown and sports. Anyway, I was out in the woods, and I mean deep out there, where nobody ever fucking goes. In one of those places where if you get in some shit and stuff goes wrong, then you're done. You know, dead. Unless, of course, you're like me and have what it takes to survive anything. Anyways, I was out there hiking around and exploring, and I lost my footing on the way down this hill. So, I goes tumbling down this hill as fast as a fucking greyhound chasing a rabbit at the track, and I must have nailed my head on a rock or something, cause everything went dark. When I woke up, my head was splitting, like I had just drank 3/5 of bourbon the night before. When I cleared the cobwebs out enough to look around, I realized I had fallen through a large crack in the rocky hillside. I must have fallen at least 15 feet from the top, and I'll tell ya, my back and face sure as hell felt like it. Luckily, I'm not one of those dumbasses who goes into a place like this unprepared, you know? So I pulled a flashlight out of my backpack and started looking around. At first, I didn't see nothing, and I mean jack shit. So, despite the fact that I got my bell rung, I decided to explore some. I didn't feel like making that climb with a concussion, so I figured, hey, maybe there's another way out. But, you know, it was a big-ass hole in the ground. I mean, it's not like I was expecting an emergency exit or nothing, but you never know. So, I walked deeper into this cave, and I see this little offshoot tunnel thing. It was about 2 feet wide and about 5 feet tall, so there wasn't a lot of room. But luckily I'm not one of those fat guys that sits around judging professional athletes from the couch, you know? So I was just skinny enough to fit. It was tight, and I wasn't sure this shit wasn't gonna pinch off at the end or drop off into some fucking chasm or some shit. So I'm being super careful about where I'm going, you know? Then this tunnel, or whatever, lasts about 20 feet and opened up into this giant underground lake, right? Man, I squeezed myself out of that hole and I'm checking out this beautiful underground place, and I mean, it was fucking gorgeous. The water was clear, the whole place was dark. It looked deep enough to be the final resting place of Jimmy Hoffa, you know? Not that any of you young fuckers know who Jimmy Hoffa is. Anyways, I'm skirting around this lake on this little edge that wrapped around it, and I'm looking all around when I hear this noise. This growl, but it was wet. Just in the darkness, where my flashlight wouldn't reach, I saw something moving. I couldn't tell what it was, but I could tell it was big, because as soon as it started moving, the cave got loud. Now, you'd expect maybe the sound of feet pounding on the ground like a bear or some shit like that, but the sound was slimy, like macaroni and cheese being stirred in a bowl, but there was also this scratching noise, like rats in the walls. The noise was amplified by the cave and echoed all around me. It made my stomach flip over and made my head feel like someone had just slipped me some lewds. I felt like I was gonna puke. I started back towards the tunnel I came through, thinking, you know, I would just get the hell out of there. I tried to keep an eye on where I was going while not taking the flashlight off of whatever the fuck that thing was, and I tripped over a fucking rock. Go figure there's rocks in an underground cave, huh? Anyways, I tripped, fell to the floor, and busted my nose on the ground. That must have really pissed the thing off or made it hungry, because the movement got louder and faster. I remember thinking, hey, at least it's on the other side of the cave. Let me tell you, that thought was fucking wrong. It may have been the blood running down my face or the noise I made, but this thing got excited. The squishy scrape of its moving around got louder, and it started making this, I don't know, I guess you could say it was clicking noise. But again, it was fucking wet. I picked myself up and started moving faster. Thanking God that thing didn't seem to want to cross the water. Well, that idea got screwed by the large splash that followed. The thing was so fucking huge that when it jumped in, the water pushed out of the sides of the pool. And this wasn't no small pool, neither. It was practically the size of an Olympic swimming pool and looked about 5 times deeper. I won't lie, that moment made me pee a little. So I started running as fast as I could through the darkness, and the ground was all fucking wet, and my face was throbbing. And so I get to the tunnel, alright? And then I realized the whole place had gone dead silent. Couldn't even hear the damn thing swimming. So, like a moron, I turned around to see if I could see the thing, you know? Just as the light touched the edge of the pool, I saw this head sticking out of the water. I mean, I guess it was its head. It had these watermelon-sized black eyes sunken into these saggy folds. And this mouth. It looked like the thing's head split in half to make room for the teeth. They were like jagged pieces of broken glass. It growled or purred or whatever when it looked at me. That's when I realized that the scratching noise was its teeth rattling together when it shook from excitement. Its skin looked like it was sunburnt, but with a touch of gangrene. It started to lift itself out of the pool with its massive hands or paws or whatever the fuck you want to call them. They looked like hands, but they were covered in folds of this rotten-looking flesh. As the panic set in, my one good nostril picked up this smell. Like rotten garbage in the middle of the summer heat. It damn near made me puke. Anyway, this thing is pulling itself out of the pool, and I started pushing myself through the hole in the wall. Just before I slipped all the way in, I took another look back. I saw this thing pull itself out of the pool, stand on all four legs, and saw the full, disgusting-ass glory of this fucking abomination. It was like someone covered a Kodiak bear in rotten moleskins and sprayed it down with raw sewage. Its hand-looking feet slapped on the ground with a click. The only thing that went through my mind was that this fucking thing had claws. Big claws. It started towards me with a speed that didn't make sense for its size. The shit was like lightning. I panic shuffled further into the tunnel and got a little pinched because my backpack. It slammed into the wall next to the entrance of the tunnel like throwing a wet towel against a locker room wall. The thing threw one of its rotten meat hook hands into the tunnel and managed to hook into my left arm. The claw cut directly into my bicep and started pulling me back a little. It seemed like the arm of this thing was made out of elastic because it stretched with me while I tried to pull myself away. It pulled at the same time I did. I thought this thing had me. If it weren't for sheer luck, if that's really what you want to call it, I would have been a monster turd by the end of the day. This luck that I'm talking about? Yeah, that was my bicep ripping in two and separating me from this monstrous piece of shit. The monster pulled a piece of meat from my arm and disappeared into the dark. Took half my muscle with it. So here I am, bleeding and hurting so bad I'm ready to pass out. The adrenaline kept me awake though, awake enough to make out the sounds of it eating. It sounded like the thing really enjoyed it because the wet clicking sound just got louder and more intense. I used what little energy I had to get the rest of the way through the tunnel. When I got back to the other side, I used my belt and shirt to pack my arm and cut off the blood flow. I needed to find a way out of this hellhole. I managed to pull my backpack off and get out the climbing gear I packed. You never know what you'll need on hikes like this. So, using the only good arm I got left at this point, I threw a rope over the log that fallen over the hole I fell through. I hooked one end to a cam and secured it into one of the cave walls. I wrapped the other part of the cord around my climbing brake and used that to start climbing out. Shit was the most difficult thing I'd ever done. That smell was still stuck in my nose and I kept watching the tunnel for any sign of that thing. It seemed too big to fit through the tunnel, but I wasn't taking any chances with the way my luck was going. I made it about halfway up before I heard this thing let out this angry roar, I guess you could say, but it was wet and deep, and it sounded as phlegmy as an old couple arguing in Yiddish. It gave me the extra adrenaline boost I needed to make it out of the hole. It took me another 3 hours to find my way back to a trail. Luckily, there was some weekend hikers that found me and called it for an ambulance. I know the official report is gonna say that I got attacked by a bear or some shit, but this is what actually happened. I ain't never going back to those fucking woods ever again.